Hi everyone, welcome back. It's the next segment of 7-Up, The Awakening, getting our TR7 back going again. Now you remember when I took the battery out, this was corroded and filthy in here. Now, I hate rust. It's unbelievable how much I hate rust. So while we were waiting for parts to arrive, we cleaned this up and gave it a quick squirt of rust paint. Now, it's a little off on color, nobody's going to see it, I'm not really worried about it. But the big thing is, it stops rust. And that's a big deal anytime you're dealing with an older vehicle. You want to make sure you take care of that stuff. You'll also notice I've wiped down the engine bay. I haven't gone whole hog yet, but that's because we're still working. And we've got our relay kit here. So we're setting up to go to the next step. And along the way, right over here, you can see we've been hard at work cleaning up bits and pieces. The battery tray's been all cleaned up, the battery hold down's been all cleaned up. We've repainted the hold downs, so it's all coming together to come back together, and we'll move into that right away. Okay, let's take one last look at all that cleanup work. Okay, no rust to be found. Color's a little off, but the battery will cover it. We have a mount here ready, all cleaned up, ready to take the relay. And old battery cable end, new battery cable end's about to go on. I don't think I need to show you how to do that. It's pretty basic, but we're going to replace both the positive and the negative. When you're doing a job like this, as long as you're in there, it only costs a couple bucks more to do it right. And it's the same with doing the cleanup stuff. Makes things look so much better, and the best part is, stops the rust. I hate rust. I can't reiterate that enough. Now over here, notice the battery, all cleaned up, fluid level checked, topped off with a little distilled water, and it's charging up to be ready for us when we're ready to install. Battery box, the base plate's all cleaned up, painted. Battery hold down, cleaned, wire brush painted, and the same with the hold down J-bolts. All cleaned, painted, ready to go on. And again, this is all about doing it right, doing it clean and neat. When I'm all done, I'm hoping this will look like it might have been intended by the factory, not a hack job. It's always best to try and do a good job on any of this stuff. And when it's all over, we're going to degrease and clean the engine up as well. So next step is going to be installing the new fuel lines, detaching the old ones from the mechanical pump. And like I said, we're going to leave it on there to fill the hole for now, but when the new engine's built, there'll be a block off plate for it. So we'll be back shortly and get started on changing the hoses. Okay, time to get dirty, and we're going to dive in and start moving fuel lines around. So first things first, we make sure we got our hose, our clamps, and our tools all handy, and then we pick our lines. So the first one we're going to do is going to be the fuel feed line, which is down here. Now, instead of making a mess and adding more line and doing all kinds of stupid things, what we're going to do is we're going to detach here. We're going to keep the filter on, because I forgot to get one for now, and run through the frame rail, so, engine mount, so everything stays away from anything that could be damaged, overheated, or anything else. And we're going to take it and run it to the input side here. So first thing we do is get it attached over here. And to do that, take off the end cap now that we're ready to get serious. So, take our new fuel line and a clamp. And we're going to get her on there. We want a nice clean edge. See, nice squarest edge we've got. Slide on the clamp. Now when you're putting it together, you got to think of where the clamp's going so you can tighten it up. This one we're going to have facing upwards where we can see. We'll run that under there. slip it on. Screwdriver. Do. Now, this kind of work isn't hard. It's just kind of a pain in the butt, but that's okay. It's got to be done. And again, we want to try and keep it looking like the factory would have done. There we go. So that one's fastened. Now, we take the line, run it through its intended area. And yeah, we've got a lot of line on here, but it's got to do 2 pieces. So we're going to pull it in. Now we want to keep things a good flow. So we got to watch what we're doing. We don't want any tight curves. We don't want any big problems that way. And we want to keep things so they all stay comfortably away. Now I like to use the brackets that exist to do this. So in this case, we're going to run up through this auxiliary bracket to get our angles perfect. Now we're going to run through the engine mount. So, okay, now I want you to get a look at how we've run this. So just give me half a sec. Because it's quite important when you're running it that you keep the angles smooth. Okay, see how that hose is running down there all the way at the bottom? It's a nice big sweep off the pump into, see there's the sweep off the pump, through the auxiliary bracket, through the engine mount, and up to where we're going to connect to the fuel filter. So, that's going to take a couple minutes, and you won't be able to see much, so I'm going to give you a break to go get a coffee while I finish getting this line in place. Okay, now just before we finish up, I want you to get a good look at the whole positioning on this. That's the fuel filter right there. Okay, we've put it through and it hides inside the engine mount where it can't get damaged, can't overheat, and it's not near any wiring. And now we're going to cut our hose here to the right length to connect the two. So once again, you can't really see what I'm doing in here. We're going to take a short break while I finish that off, and then we'll move on to the next line. Okay, and here we have the completed install. See how it's nicely protected, out of the way, it's away from any wiring, runs right to their pump with a nice even sweep, and it all goes together nicely. Next, we're going to go from the fuel regulator, which is right down here, to the output side of the pump. And again, can't see much while I'm doing it, but we're going to follow the same process. We're going to take the line, attach it to the pump on the output side, snug it all up, buckle it all up, run it out to where the regulator is, and make sure we can run a line where it's as protected as possible. And we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, now let's look what we've gotten done. Here's the fuel regulator, and these are a very low pressure system. You see it's set right now at 2.5, oops, I bumped it, 2.5 pounds pressure. English carbs don't like a ton of pressure, so we like to be careful with them. We've checked all the lines that run to it. We've tightened every clamp, made sure everything's safe, and then installed a new hose, again passing through the engine mount, up behind the brake line, and onto the output side of the pump where it's clamped tight. So the hose side of this is now finished, and we're going to move to doing the electrical. Not my favorite thing, so we'll be back with that one in another episode. But look at the work we've done. Okay, everything's cleaned up, de-rusted, new battery cable ends, everything is clean as we can get it without doing a full engine shampoo. The fuel pump, the fuel filter is in a safe place. It's away from rock damage, it's away from wiring. nice sweeping curves onto the pump to keep it unloaded. And then the last piece, you'll notice in here I've looped one piece of the old line back on the old fuel pump. So if it starts to get an internal oil leak or something, we don't end up with a problem. So that's it for the hoses and the prep. The next step is going to be the wiring, and we want our electric pump to come on with the ignition. So it's going to have to be hooked to the ignition system, and we'll be putting a fuse in it. We'll be putting a fuse to the pump and running it through a 4-prong relay. So that's where we're at right now, folks, and we'll be back soon to finish the wiring and fire her up. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon from Real Builds. Oh, before I forget, let's talk about supplies for a second. Now, something not everybody thinks of: get the right parts. All right, you see, this is a fuel line rated for up to 50 pounds pressure. Do not use line like this on fuel injection, but for what we're doing, as you saw, 2.5 pounds pressure, it is a proper fuel line so that it does the right job, provides the right protection, and you don't run into trouble. Don't substitute vacuum line or anything else. Use the right line. And the same thing when it comes to clamps. It's easy to cheap out on clamps. Don't. I buy good quality hose clamps like these. Screw type, not clamp type. Okay? We don't use ones like this. I only keep them around for a bad example. We do not use these. We use the proper screw type clamp. Good quality. The difference of a couple of cents just doesn't make sense to take unnecessary risks. Now, you can do what you want. I'm just telling you what I do. But the last thing you want is an engine fire, and that takes the car with it. Even with this install, what I've never liked about the Triumphs is all the ignition is right here and the fuel lines are right underneath. So that's why I've taken such care to avoid the ignition system, avoid the alternator wiring, and put them in highly protected areas. Very important. Now, everything we're doing here will apply to a Triumph, a Camaro, a Nissan, doesn't matter. Think about this stuff, just like I was saying, when you put on the clamp, think about the direction you have to tighten it from. Because if you get it on, twist it a little bit, and then you can't get a screwdriver to it and you have a problem, it'll drive you nuts. So, until we come back with the relay and wiring, that's it from Real Builds.